So I want to thank you, Dakota, and the Alumni Association for the opportunity for us to talk about what I agree is one of the neatest traditions on campus, Comatose. And what a great day to share that story here on Veterans Day 2020. Tens of thousands of Rams have served this great nation through times of war and peace, going all the way back to our university's founding. And even two of those Ram alumni have been awarded the nation's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor. But regardless of combat or peace, their branch of service, whether they were officers or enlisted, Ram veterans have continued to and will continue to represent our community with pride and excellence. I thank each of you for your service. But you aren't here today to listen to some random Lieutenant Colonel ramble about Veterans Day. You're here to find out about the oldest game day tradition at CSU, the cannon, that has made all of us jump from our skin at least once as we cheered on the Knights of the Green and Gold, either at Colorado Field, Hughes, or Canvas Stadium. To begin, we will talk about the incredible history of Comatose, and then we're going to have a panel afterwards that will answer your questions about Army ROTC, the cannon, or its amazing history. To really understand the history of Comatose, though, we need to look back at the history of cannons and military training at CSU, and ultimately the origins of Colorado Agricultural College. At this time, we have two Army ROTC cadets, Colby Struckman, who's a senior, and Owen King, a junior, who will now present the history and function of Comatose. Take it away, gentlemen.
Well, welcome again, and thank you for joining us today, not only to honor the veterans from all over the country, but to celebrate the 100th anniversary of CSU's oldest tradition, the cannon. My name is Cadet Colby Struckman. I'm a senior majoring in wildlife biology. I hope to pursue a career in Army aviation. Currently, I'm the cadet officer in charge, or otherwise known as the OIC of Cannon Crew.
Hello everyone, my name is Cadet Owen King. I'm a junior majoring in business with a concentration in investment finance. I'm the cadet non-commissioned officer in charge, or also known as the NCOIC of Cannon Crew.
To begin, Camp Collins, later renamed Fort Collins, was established in 1862 near LaPorte and named after Colonel William L. Collins, commander of Camp Laramie in Wyoming. On February 11, 1870, Governor Edward McCook signed a territorial bill authorizing the creation of the Agricultural College of Colorado. The college was founded as a land-grant university. This requires some form of military training curriculum as part of the agreement with the U.S. government. 9 years later, on September 1st, 1879, President Elijah Evan Edwards welcomed the first 5 students to Colorado Agricultural College. In 1874, the first group of student officers in training started at the college under Major Vasa Stolbrand, the first professor of military science. The first military training was probably not much more than drills and lessons in obedience while wearing a military uniform. As training became more formalized, each land-grant college focused on a different style of military training. At Colorado Agricultural College, this was field artillery. Shown here is the military science class of 1899. First Lieutenant William C. Davis, who was a West Point class of 1890 graduate, served as Colorado Agricultural College Professor of Military Science from 1897 to 1898. He was actually an appointed Artillery Corps officer who would go on to command the 32nd Heavy Artillery Brigade in World War I, and ultimately would retire as a Brigadier General. Not much is known about the specifications of the early 20th century military training prior to World War I, as there is little standardization from the War Department and across the various land-grant colleges. What we do know is that Colorado Agricultural College continued the training as shown in these photos of military student trainees. In 1916, Congress passed the National Defense Act, which created the Reserve Officer Training Corps, now known as ROTC, which continues to this day. A few months later, Colorado Agricultural College applied to establish an ROTC unit in Fort Collins. This formalized the military officer training at Colorado Agricultural College. During that time, each school trained officers in only one specialty branch. At the Colorado, Aggies continued to train specifically for the Artillery Corps. This brought the introduction of cannons. caissons, horses, mules, and stables to the college. With the arrival of World War I, the government allowed students enrolled at the college in the College Cadet Corps to qualify for officer commissions by taking special examinations. The longer a student associated with a military training program, the better his odds for securing a higher rank. In this picture, cadets are learning about the parts of the breech of a French 75mm cannon. As you may know, the tradition of the cannon began in the 1920s due to the large amount of artillery training here on campus. The football field, at the time named Colorado Field, was not only used for sports. The field was also used as grounds to perform military training during the 1920s. The field is used to conduct training that would help the men perform in a field artillery battery. With the cannons on the field, it was only a matter of time before the cannon was shot off during a football game. After the first game the cannon was shot at, it became CSU's first tradition. The 1920s saw a lot of growth in the ROTC program here on campus. The university built not just a military science building, but a whole complex. Here we can see the Masons laying the cornerstone for the military science building in 1928. Behind the military science building, there used to be gun sheds where the cannons and caissons were stored. Further behind that were the stables that kept the military horses. Here you can see that Colorado Field used to set directly across the street from the military science complex. This made it quite easy to conduct artillery training in the stadium, but also to fire these big guns at the football games, and then store them away in the gun sheds when they are finished. Although it is not clear in what ways the cannon was shot off in the past, since we have kept records, the cannon has been shot off 1 hour before the game, during the national anthem when the Lion, Bombs Bursting in Air is played, and any times the Rams score a touchdown, field goal, or safety. The cannon will also be fired during halftime if the Rams are ahead. When the Rams win the game, 3 thunderous shots can be heard over the cheering crowd. The first cannon that was used in our tradition was a cannon commonly known as the French 75. The name is fitting due to the fact that most of these cannons were made in France and they fire 75mm artillery rounds. Transporting a cannon during war is not an easy thing to do. Although transporting a cannon on campus is much easier, we still had help from the horses that were kept in the stables on campus. These photos show the setup of how many horses and men were used during the College Sunrise Salute Battery to transport the cannon on campus in 1928. As you can imagine, the artillery training on campus must have been incredibly loud. Here's a photo of the French 75 being shot during the Sunrise Battery in 1928. They may have been the only thing on campus louder than the trains that have been rolling through since. Males weren't the only one engaged in military training at Colorado Agricultural College. These photos show a group of female cadet sponsors posing with one of the cannons in 1928. As years passed, the students made a carriage to transport the cannon. It was originally pulled by a team of horses. Later, a truck was fitted to pull it. During the away games, the cannon was often transported to the fields the game would be played at. Often on the way to these games, the cannon could be heard shooting off in the small cities it's passed. Although the sheriff wasn't a huge fan of this part of the tradition, he eventually let it slide because of the president of the college would often accompany the cannon as it was transported. In the 1930s, campus received a new cannon. This new cannon was a rare model 1916 American field gun. This photo shows what the second cannon looked like. This cannon was used on campus until 1942. The 1930s also saw a lot more growth in the Army ROTC program. From 1932 until the outbreak of World War II, enrollment in the program grew steadily, as did the school's enrollment. American involvement in World War II seemed a bit inevitable by the fall of 1941. The college began to offer tuition-free national defense courses through its engineering program and made quick improvements to its airfield and artillery facilities. Here we can see the cadets enjoying a hot mess in a campus dining facility.
The Second World War had a huge impact on the CSU campus. Football games were completely canceled during the war. This means that the tradition of the cannon had to be put on pause. This is a good thing because in 1942, the Army recalled all guns from colleges to be serviced and ready to be sent overseas to be used in the war. If you were to step on campus during World War II, you could have mistaken it for a military base. Military and aircraft equipment were stored on campus. Various types of military training were also conducted on campus during this time. The end of the war brought more huge changes to campus. In 1944, the GI Bill was created. This bill gave all veterans access to free education. As you can imagine, the many men returning from home took advantage of this bill. Enrollment at CSU soared and the number of cadets doubled. Along with the return of soldiers, football games returned as well. The Army gave the university a loaner French 75 style cannon to be used in this tradition. In 1945, Colonel Peter Salgado wrote a memo to the Army formally asking for the cannon to be permanently given to the university to be used in the cannon tradition. These photos are a scan of what the memo sent by Colonel Salgado. The memo from Colonel Salgado resulted in the Army giving us the Comatose we know and love today in 1952. The new cannon was well received by both the university and the cadets of Army ROTC. Here we can see this photo from the 1950s of cadets performing maintenance on the cannon behind the Military Science Building. Note the gun sheds that were still standing at this time. While the cannon continued to be used during the football games, the university found other ways for Comatose to contribute. This photo shows Comatose in 1965 on the plaza, firing for Veterans Day. Notice how the colors of the cannon are solidly gold and green by this time. Comatose is quite the cannon. It is 75mm M1897, also known as a 75mm howitzer. Comatose weighs more than 3,400 pounds. It fires blank shells that are loaded with 1 pound of black powder. While it was used in World War I, it had an accurate range up to 14 miles. Here's a video demonstration.
Its name is Comatose, and it's the oldest tradition at Colorado State University.
When you're on the cannon, it's a lot of fun. Just kind of standing there, you get to watch the game as well as shooting 75mm howitzer, which is a pretty cool thing.
In 1952, the cannon was donated to the university after being a training weapon during World War II. While Comatose is nearing its 100th birthday, Sam Fleshman, the cannon first in command, was a young Ram when he fell in love with this tradition.
Ever since the first game, when I first saw this fire, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Sure enough, 3 years later, Fleshman was not only a part of the cannon crew, but leading it. He says the experience has been a dream come true.
I just think it's cool being able to fire a cannon. It's something that no one else can do. And being up here next to all the fans, you really become the face of ROTC, and you get to meet all these different people. It's just a fun overall experience.
An experience and ritual that comes with a price. Fleshman says each round costs $35, which can add up depending on how many times CSU scores, leading Comatose to fire. He says the Army covers most of the rounds, and the university covers the rest.
They're not cheap, but the university is willing to pay for it, and we thank them for that because it allows us to keep this tradition going, and the fans love it.
Fleshman isn't the only one who makes this iconic tradition happen. He has a second in command, a cannoneer, and a team of usually 7 cadets that rotate between security, preparing and cleaning the cannon, as well as what he thinks is the most important part of being on the cannon crew, interacting with the fans, alumni, and veterans.
You get to meet a lot of people when you're standing on security, and just get to talk to a lot of cool people, typically a lot of veterans, which is really awesome. Good to see people and how they support the military.
Ray Kepler has dreams of joining the armed forces one day, but for now, this young fan is fascinated by learning everything he can about the CSU ROTC and grateful for those who serve in the U.S. military.
Thank you those who now serve my country.
Fans like Kepler are hard to come by, and that is why the cannon crew appreciate him and all the other Ram fans that honor the CSU ROTC and Comatose's legacy.
Sorry, I was on mute. The cannon crew has a specific SOP, standard operating procedure, for firing during the football games. The cannon is manned by an NCOIC and a cadet gunner. The gunner is responsible for firing, and the NCOIC is responsible for loading, manning the safety, and unloading the cannon. The OIC is set behind the cannon with visual contact of the cadre on the field. A cadre on the field will relay the signals given by the referees. When the Rams are about to score, the cannon crew is put on standby. The gunner will pull the tether, and the NCOIC will switch the safety off. When told to fire, the gunner will release the tether, firing the cannon. The gunner will then open the breech, and the NCOIC will catch the empty shell. The NCOIC will give his report to the OIC, consisting of the bore and safety status, along with how many shells were fired to that point.
Clear, 14 rounds fired, weapon on safe.
The cannon is assembled through 4 main parts. The parts shown here are the pin, extractor, and extractor trigger. These components are responsible for releasing empty shells. They are assembled by first placing the extractor and extractor trigger, and then the pin slides in from the left, holding the pieces together. The breech is the biggest component of the cannon and is responsible for firing the actual shell. The breech screws into the grooves of the cannon and holds the trigger, hammer, and safety. A unique fact about Comatose is that to fire the cannon, the tether must be pulled and then let go, compared to other cannons where pulling the tether simply fires the cannon. A 75mm shell is quite large. Notice the can of spray paint so you can see the size difference compared to one of these 75mm shells. In 2018, Comatose was taken to mile-high powder coating for a complete disassembly to be refurbished. Comatose was completely disassembled and then had previous paint removed and repainted and cleaned. This process took in total 6 weeks to complete. Here's the video.
This is our university cannon that has been part of the tradition at the Colorado State University football games since 1920. So it's the oldest tradition at Colorado State. I noticed that the cannon was starting to look pretty rough. It needed some tender love and care. The Alumni Association decided that it was important to restore it, and today we're receiving it back and taking it back to the university where it'll sit on the football field. We fire it about 4 times before the game starts, and then hopefully we shoot it a whole bunch more after that, because every time the team scores, we fire it. Also, all the graduating cadets from Colorado State get one of these as they graduate and commission into the United States Army. Just looking at it, this is every bit as beautiful as anything I've seen in a museum.
Comatose received a new green and gold paint job to restore it to its original colors. It is a perfect fit since the cannon matches the university colors, green and gold as well. In the past, records have shown that cadets often took it upon themselves to paint the cannon to match the school colors. Imagine seeing a bright orange cannon in the day of the Aggies. Hughes Stadium was the home of the cannon from 1986 to 2016. The cannon rested proudly on the upper deck right next to the scoreboard. I am sure many of you have a distinct memory of how loud the cannon was with the hills surrounding the stadium. This is a photo of one of our cadets on cannon crew. While working on the cannon, our ROTC program has the honor of hosting many honorable guest cannoneers. These guest cannoneers are selected by the university and fired during the national anthem. These photos are of our previous university president, Tony Frank, firing the cannon. Hughes Stadium offered the opportunity for fans to come see the cannon up close. This was a unique opportunity for all. Kids in particular loved being able to see the cannon and meeting our cadets. Fans also had the opportunity to come take pictures with the cannon. This opportunity for fan outreach assisted ROTC in our recruiting efforts. The program would host a tent and greet and converse with fans during the game. While at Hughes, the cannon crew could be as many as 14 cadets working the game. This particular shell was the last shell fired from Hughes Stadium in 2016. Hughes Stadium was the next home for Comatose. The Cannon Bay is located in the southeast corner of the stadium. This location offers the fans a unique experience. If you're a fan lucky enough to have a seat on the sides of the bay, you can watch the cannon crew work and fire the cannon. Just a warning, if you're sitting in those seats, you better be ready to cover your ears. Sitting that close to the cannon will make you jump. During the season, the cannon remains in the Cannon Bay. The cannon remains covered until the Rams take the field again. The picture shown is the point of view from the Cannon Bay during the late season in 2017. Being a member of the cannon crew is on every cadet's to-do list. Not only do you get the opportunity to fire a 75mm cannon, you also get some of the best seats in the house. It is a frequent occasion that good old Cam the Ram stops by to see the cannon crew. Cannon crew members also get time to be close on the field and are even able to get on the big screen sometimes. One of my favorite parts about being the Cannon Crew NCOIC is that I have the opportunity to meet our guest cannoneers. Many are CSU alumni that return to our football games to support their school. Talking and getting to know our guest cannoneers is an amazing experience, and it really shows the cannon and how much history CSU has, and it keeps us in touch with the classes before us. It is a tradition for Army ROTC to send our seniors off with a bang. The last game of the year, we have many of our senior cadets attend the games so they can serve on our cannon crew. For many years, the spent shells were engraved and given out to the university VIPs and graduating Army ROTC cadets. Unfortunately, the 75mm shell size is no longer used by the military, and the surplus has been diminishing over the years. Every year, the Rocky Mountain Showdown is on everyone's mind. The opportunity to beat our rivals in Boulder is always a great experience. The cannon crew has also been a big part of the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Until this year, Comatose was transported to Mile High Stadium and was used in the games. The opportunity to shoot the cannon on the Denver Bronco field while rooting for our Rams is an experience that our cannon crew will never forget. Another tradition that the cannon participates in is the bronze boot. This is a tradition of running the game ball to the Colorado-Wyoming border and handing it off to the other school's cadets. The winning football team is given the bronze boot trophy for the entire year. The trophy is made of an actual boot worn by Captain Romero during 2 operations in Vietnam. Captain Romero was a CSU ROTC alumni. The cannon is transported to the border to be shot off during the handover ceremony. It is fired once while the away team arrives at the border, once during the national anthem, and once as the home team leaves the border. It is worth mentioning that the bronze boot was a little under 2 weeks ago and the Rams won, and that means the boot is here to stay. Here's a picture of the cannon positioned at the border for the handoff ceremony in 2019. When not in use, Comatose can be found in the Alumni Center. It is stored inside in order to protect it from the harsh elements. It is also kept inside the Alumni Center and so campus guests can come see and get to the cannon up close. Although you may not be able to visit Comatose this year due to COVID, we hope you'll come see it when it is safe to do so. This will conclude our presentation. We would like to thank you for participating and help us to honor the cannon tradition. Lastly, we would like to thank and honor the men and women that defended our nation. We will now open this time for a panel-style Q&A. We will hand it back to Lieutenant Colonel Tillman for final remarks and to introduce our panel. I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Yep, that's Struckman and King. Hey guys, thank you. That was a good rundown. And as most of our folks will see in the text, we have a phenomenal Department of the Army civilian, Dave Gutierrez, who is a retired warrant officer, another veteran, who is really key to us keeping this tradition alive on the logistics front, as well as the history side. So we really appreciate what he's done. But guys, thanks for that great rundown. Ladies and gentlemen, these cadets really are the experts of the operation of this cannon. They're the ones who know how to assemble it. They're the ones who know how to clean it. They're the ones who know how to fire this thing safely to help us out during those game day activities. So Cadets King and Struckman will be joined by another alumni of the Ram Battalion in Colorado State, Lieutenant Hannah Ulig, who is a 2016 alumni of our battalion and also kind of an expert on artillery things because she is an active duty artillery officer at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I can't think of anybody else, any other panel members who would be better to answer their questions, your questions about Comatose this evening. So if you can, we'll use the Q&A function down at the bottom as well as the text box to start answering those questions. So I'll switch over real quick and see if I can see our first question. So the first one is, how did we get the name of Comatose? And I don't know the answer to that. Let's see if any of the panel members do.
Yeah, sir, we aren't 100% sure on that. There's no definite records that said there's a specific reason. So our best guess is that they just wanted a really cool name, and Comatose is a pretty fitting name for it, I'd say.
So I will say that it is tradition in the Army to name your weapon system. So you'll see battle tanks, you'll see Bradley fighting vehicles, et cetera, that have a name painted on them. And usually the crew is responsible for naming them, and it's something sinister such as death and destruction, or Comatose in this case. So maybe it's just the repercussion that has made us all jump out of our skin. Thank you for the question, though. I'm sorry we don't have an answer for you. Second question is, how do we transport Comatose? So can any one of the three of you answer that?
Yes, sir, I can speak on that. So traditionally, like we said in the slideshow, it was transported by horse or with a carriage. Today, when we're transporting it, when we do on the rare occasion like to the border, we use the assistance of a local towing company, and we actually bring a tow truck up to the stadium, and we use a winch to pull the cannon onto the bed of the tow truck, and then that's how we are able to transport it.
The next question we have is, how long have we been using Comatose as part of the border run? I don't know. So in 2003 is the last time I did the border run before coming back as the PMS, and I think that Comatose went to the border then. So I think we've been doing it that long. Major Parker or Lieutenant Eulig, you guys got any insight into that?
Sir, no, I can tell you that we've been bringing it since I've been on board here since 2017, but we don't have any history of the 90s or the 80s when it's been used up at the border.
Okay. LT, you got anything?
Kind of the same. We've been using it up there ever since I got to ROTC, which I started in 2015. So, and it wasn't a new thing then, but I'm not exactly sure how long they have been using it there.
So I think we can fairly definitively say at least to the early 2000s. Okay. All right, who has fired the cannon? What's our highest round count from one of you three inside of a single game is the next question that we've got.
Sir, the highest I've ever seen is we've gotten all the way up to 16. I forget which our opponent was, but I remember being the NCOIC for one of those and getting all the way up to 16, and we had shells all over the cannon bay.
Same here, sir. That was my personal record as well.
LT, can you beat that one?
I think we beat that when I was there. I can't remember the actual number because I wasn't on cannon crew, but I want to say we hit 20 at one of our games. I can't quite remember though.
Awesome, good stuff. All right, our next question is definitely one for one of you two who's on the crew now. How much training is required to fire the cannon?
Yes, sir. So personally, myself and King, we go through a little more of an extensive training process since we're there during every game. We go through all the emergency, excuse me, all the emergency procedures as if, like if a shell would not fire or something in that case happen. For the guest cannoneers and for our cadets that are with us, we give them a brief and then we do a practice run with them without a shell in the cannon, of course, just so they understand the function and how the cannon operates. And this is usually enough for them to operate the cannon in an efficient manner with our assistance, of course.
Expand on that a little bit more. We have our cadets that run the cannon crew. The ones that join us, they get about 2 hours. They're required to be there 2 hours before the game. And then for our guest cannoneers, we have them come in about 30 minutes prior.
There's also an annual certification that all of the cadre for ROTC have to go through that we usually do before the first football game of the year, where we have to go through the entire standard operating procedure, and then we work with the cadet OIC and the NCOIC to make sure we're good. Sorry, I've got a 2-year-old over here having a hard time.
Yeah, great questions. And some of that is because we haven't certified this year. So we thought we were going to be able to fire the cannon this year. Unfortunately, just not something that made the cut for the game day experience. I have another very general question down here in the chat window. How many ROTC cadets and what branches of the military? So we have about 140 cadets in the battalion. That changes a little bit as we go through the semester. Most of those are at CSU, but we also, part of our battalion is at the University of Northern Colorado as well. And then branching wise, that they are not branched now. So that is not the way ROTC works anymore. It used to be that it was a specific branch that was trained by a university. Now our seniors will receive their branches here, in another 2 weeks, right? Cadet Struckman, is that they're waiting on pins and needles to find out what they'll be.
Yes, sir.
So pretty exciting times for us, and we usually do a very big unveiling of that. I think this year it's going to have to be virtual as well, but we'll make sure that we give the appropriate fanfare for them to find out. I hope that answers your question. It looks like to Jan down there. All right. I don't see any other questions at this time. We'll make one more call for questions, I think, Dakota, unless you've got another way you'd like to do this here. I think we got one more. How is ROTC training going with COVID guidelines? Hey, how about either Colby or King, you guys take that one. Struckman or King, you guys take that one.
Yes, sir. I can elaborate on that a little bit. Long story short, it's going as good as it can with COVID going on right now. We're still planning every event like we can run it. Unfortunately, this year, a lot of our events have been canceled just because of county and national guidelines. Basically, we're getting a lot of good training, though. In our class, pretty much the MS4 class or our senior class, we're responsible for training all of our events, or planning all of our events and conducting that training. So being able to practice planning and be able to adapt and overcome when that planning gets adjusted and manipulated is really good training for us. So there's a lot of pros and cons to it, but we're making it through.
He may have said that because his instructor is talking now. I don't know. That may be why he said the training's going pretty well. All right. We have another question here. I think, Hannah, LT, this might be a good one for you. How do you get the same bang out of the cannon without shooting a bullet?
Yeah, so it's still going to be, since you're using the black powder, it's not going to be nearly as loud if you're doing if you have actual projectiles in there. When we're doing our live fires in field artillery, it's actually going to be much louder, and make sure you have to have the ear protection. But you still get the really good noise from having the black powder in there.
Okay, Cadet King, we have a question about what is the process of cleaning the cannon? How do we go about cleaning?
Yes, sir. So we clean them before the game, at halftime, and also at the end of the game, and it just simply consists of us disassembling the cannon, taking out those 4 main components. We have steel wool that we kind of rub them all down on and then give them a good coat of CLP, and then we kind of just screw them all back together.
Yeah, CLP is a fancy, comes in gallon buckets of weapons cleaning solution that the Army is very, very fond of, Mr. Slack. So, okay, what are our favorite parts of maintaining or shooting the cannon? So probably from one of you three, or if you, maybe all three of you can answer that question. What's your favorite part of maintaining or shooting Comatose?
So I can start that. Obviously, there's nothing else even that I've experienced that is remotely close to shooting the cannon. Just something about the feeling of when you let go of that rope and you cause that big bang is just a really awesome feeling, especially during the national anthem. That's really humbling and prideful moment, letting go of a monstrous round during the national anthem. And that just makes you feel really patriotic and super proud to be where I'm at today.
I would answer that by saying that just being able to work along the sideline, like being on the sidelines, being close to fans, but also being close to the game is super fun. And also just kind of working with our cadets, being close to each other, kind of outside the classroom, outside the program, but also being able to represent our ROTC program, but also be a Ram as well.
Yeah, since it does get so loud, even if you're not at the game, you can still hear the cannon being fired like all through Fort Collins. And so that's always just like really exciting knowing that everybody can hear you and everybody knows that we just got a touchdown because we're firing off that cannon. So it's just a really fun part to just be a part of that, and everybody knows about it, even if they're not at the game.
And just to build on that point, Lieutenant, I was just talking to one of my coworkers today, and he was saying that he lives about 2 miles away from the stadium, and he still wakes up every night when we're shooting off the cannon during the game. So that's a really awesome point that you just made too.
I'll take the next question. So we have a question from Rob. Since you mentioned that the shells are being depleted, what are the future implications? So we're watching surplus stores as one of the places, and we've got enough shells to get through. So they do, just like any other round that you reload, they have a life expectancy on them. And I can't give you a number because it really does just change, but we're watching that closely. And if we get close to a point where we're not going to have enough rounds, then we will remill that cannon, I think, is what we'll have to do. So make it into a different size, maybe a bigger size, maybe make it a little bit smaller. But we will come up with another solution. Comatose will ring. So we haven't had to cross that bridge yet, is what I would say in short. All right, we have a question from Mr. Bodie, and he wants to know if there is any off-season maintenance for the cannon.
So typically we don't do a ton of off-season maintenance. The biggest one would be the repainting of the cannon. Like we mentioned in the slides, that was like the biggest off-season maintenance that we've done in the near past. Usually what we'll do is we'll do a really in-depth 2 or 3 hour cleaning session at the end of every season. Make sure we really wipe it down, clean the bore, and clean pretty much every part of the cannon before we take it into the Alumni Association building. That way it's in pristine condition for our visitors to go and see it.
The next question from Corey says, what do you do with the cannon after football seasons? Are there any other uses besides the football games? Cadet King, do you have that one? Can you do that one?
So typically, obviously, the main is the football season. We do the border, and then that is, to my understanding, as of recently, that is what the main components are. We had in the slide that we had a Veterans Day in the plaza, but we haven't done that as of recently. So really the border war and then football season is our main.
Yes, those are the only events we're using the Comatose for. It'll remain a game day tradition as far as I know, for several reasons, but mostly because we can't put it inside of Moby. I don't think that they would like us to do that. Although it'd be funny. It might be funny, but thank you for your questions. Dakota, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I don't know if you'd like to, if you think we're probably about ready to wrap this up, but I sure appreciate the opportunity for us to tell our piece of this amazing CSU tradition.
Well, it looks like people are excited. We've got more coming in. I'll let you answer. Maybe we'll take these last two and then kind of close things out.
Okay. Let's see what you guys have for answers. Has a rival ever attempted to take the cannon as a prank? LT, have you ever heard of anybody trying to take the cannon?
I've never heard of that happening, sir. I think we keep our cannon nice and locked up, so I don't think anybody would be able to take it from us.
Sir, I'd be incredibly impressed if they were able to move that cannon by themselves. It takes about 4 of us to do it, and we're moving really slow.
That struck me. You think we could pull it off? You think somebody could steal it?
Sir, I would have to say a hard negative on that one. We do have it. We have quite a few locks and chains on it during the season when it's in the football stadium. So one, they'd have to get inside the stadium, which is locked down pretty tight. And then they'd have to make it over to the cannon bay, which has an additional lock on it. And then they would have to deal with the multiple chains and locks that are on the cannon itself. And then along with that, not all the parts of the cannon are stored there. So it would be pretty much just a piece of really heavy metal. If they did want to do that, they wouldn't be able to fire it off or anything like that. So no, I haven't heard anything of that. And then during the games, we have a security detail with extra cadets that stand along the sidelines of the cannon, which makes sure that no one is able to get close enough where they could tamper with the cannon or cause any damage to it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Last question then. Really, it's a two-part question from Ms. Henderson. That says, what is the selection process of the cadets like who get to shoot the cannon on the crew?
So I'll answer that, sir. Typically at the beginning of the year, we send out a spreadsheet, a sign-up sheet for all the cadets to kind of write down what games they want to participate in. We try to get as many as possible, but with it being very popular, we kind of only have cadets do one a semester. But it's just simply you put your name down, we'll pick you for a week, and then we train you and you'll work the game.
And then to build off that, sir, sorry to interrupt. We also try to have at least one person from every class. That way, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior level cadets get to experience this awesome tradition. So I just wanted, except for the last game of the year, we try to get as many seniors as we can on that cannon crew. That way they can go out with a bang. Sorry for the corny joke.
Unintended. Got it. All right. And that is the last bit of the question is how many cadets are on the crew?
In the past, we've had up to 14, like at Hughes. In the video, they'd said about 7, but kind of depends on how popular the game is and kind of what game they're playing. But for the Cannon Bay, we can't have as many as we had in the past, so we've kind of kept it down to 5, where we've had 3 on the cannon and then 2 on security.
Okay. And Mr. Slack, so for your question that you popped up there, they apply. So we have a cadet chain of command. How do the cadets apply to be on the cannon crew? And we have a cadet chain of command that operates just like it would in the real Army. So they have a team leader who's their first line supervisor, and then they have a squad leader who's kind of the next level, and then it goes to the platoon, the company, and all the way up to the battalion. And so those requests for who's going to support the various game day activities, because there's usually a color guard when we're on campus or at canvas. Cannon crew is one of those components. And then you also have the push-up crew. So we have cadets doing many different things on game day. So that cadet chain of command takes those requirements, that filters down to the lowest level, to the freshmen that are inside of the formation and the sophomores and everyone else. And we start filling in names to requirements so that we can continue all the awesomeness that goes on for a Ram game. So again, thank you everyone for your attendance today. Lieutenant Ulick, thank you for coming in all the way from Fort Bragg to help us out. Cadets King and Struckman, you guys did a great job with this rundown. And Dakota, thank you to the Alumni Association for letting us tell our story and our piece of this great tradition.
Yes, and thank you right back to each of you. We appreciate all of you for being here, for sharing your story, for being part of our RAM community. It was really, really wonderful. Thank you all for your service. Thanks for spending part of your Veterans Day with us. We really, really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our attendees for joining. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks again.